What's up, everybody? CP and SJ with you again for another week of picks here on Every Day We're Covering. We're into week 11 of the college football season. Unfortunately, as we kind of alluded to on the pod this week, we're a little bit on the downhill slide of the college football slate, but we're going to enjoy the damn thing while it lasts, that's for sure. And hopefully we'll have some good picks for you. SJ, I think we're excited for another fun week here.
Yeah, we got the first playoff rankings revealed earlier this week, so that was exciting, and we're holding our breath there, like couldn't believe that that those few moments in time just seemed like a dream, didn't it? But anyways, we're gonna get to the matters. Of course, maybe we should put a check by that, and let's visit here and see how many of those 12 are on there when we get to the last rankings, because I think there's still a lot of work to be done here, and I think there's going to be a lot of surprises still, even as we are down here to last 3 or 4 games. I think there's a lot to be decided.
Yeah, I think we'll have a lot to say about that on the pod too, because there's some goofy things going on as we expected with that nonsense, anyways. But still a long ways to go here as far as sorting things out and who's going to be in that fun 12-team playoff that we definitely are looking forward to. We're going to get into our picks here for you, and hopefully we'll deliver some dough in your pocket again here this week. So we're going to jump back and forth. I'll start off here. The first one that I'm looking at here is I'm going to go with the Minnesota Golden Gophers. They are on the road at Rutgers, and they are giving 6 points, which, you would think maybe is a little bit risky just because Minnesota is not usually a team to, guarantee bank on type of wins. But they've been trending upwards. They seem to have figured something out here these last few weeks, and Rutgers is going in the exact opposite direction. They've lost their last 4. They're 0-3-1 against the spread as well in their last 4 games. They just have not been getting it done. They give up quite a bit in the run game, and Minnesota is one of those teams that'll be happy to try to grind out some drives. So I just think this sets up really well for Minnesota the way they've been playing, and I like them to get that cover.
The way the season's played out for Minnesota is what a lot of people thought Rutgers was going to do. A 7-8, maybe even a 9-win team, and if you weren't paying attention or just like asked a random person, like, what do you think Minnesota's record is right now? I don't think many people would have them at 6-3. That's for sure. So,
No.
job well done to them. That's a great pick. In no particular order, I'll just start at the top of my list here. This is one that on one side I could see a lot of points being scored, but the other one I don't think that will be the case, and that's Miami and Georgia Tech. The total is 64. I'm going to go ahead and take the unders. I do think maybe this could get a little bit close to that number thanks to Miami. I could see them putting up another 40 spot, because we talked about last week how, Duke let you down there. Just, stay within 20, 21 points, and it couldn't get it done when they were, within a score or even 10 points for most of the contest. So that explosiveness of Miami maybe make this one a little interesting, but I do think, I could see a blowout here, like, a 38-10 or something, and then we're still well under that number. So I think we'll go ahead and take the unders on that one. But I do expect a lot of points from Miami, just not the case for Georgia Tech.
Yeah, that's a lot of points to get to, so I don't hate that idea as well. I guess sometimes people say you're kind of the Debbie Downer of the betting world if you're going with the unders, but I think that's going to be kind of a theme here this week for us, because I'm going to go with one here, and it's in a big game. And not necessarily teams, I guess, that you would always say you'd expect them to go under, but Georgia at Ole Miss. I wanted to go with the pick here because I think this is one of those moments again where Ole Miss drops the ball and Georgia wins, but Georgia's been rather shaky here lately, and obviously didn't play that well last week either against Florida. So I didn't go that route, but I like the under in this game. It's at 55.5. If it creeps down much lower than that, then I will be a little bit hesitant. But I like it where it is because I just think in this type of game, it's going to be obviously a huge game for Ole Miss. Big game as far as the conference is concerned for Georgia and their aspirations to be, one of the best teams in the country. I think the two teams will play it close to the vest early in the game. They're going to do a lot of feeling each other out, which means they probably won't score a lot of points early in the game. And defenses are honestly the strength of these two teams, especially lately, the way they've played. Georgia's been kind of a mess on offense. So I think they stay under that mark. That's where I'm going with that one.
Well, you even look against, like opponents. Neither team has been the explosive, we saw maybe early in the season, especially Georgia. Ole Miss has still put up some, numbers here and there. They're kind of like the video game them in Tennessee was the two that really stood out there in the non-con, just kind of throwing up 60 and 70 spots. But that's definitely tapered off pretty significantly. So yeah, I could definitely see that hitting. That's a good play. I'm gonna go to the Big Ten here, and this isn't in a team I have a ton of confidence in. But it's more of a fact of playing the odds. Indiana has not had very many close games this season. I believe maybe like one within a couple touchdowns there. My shoe might have been Maryland. It was a random weird game. Michigan State, I guess, hung with them for a quarter and a half or so, but then faded. But I think Michigan has maybe a little bit more athletic ability to stay with them. It could be, when we're sweating here a little bit, might not be a very comfortable win, but I think they can maybe stay within 2 touchdowns, which, that would get us that hook's going to help us in this case. 14 and a half is the spread that when I made the play, at least. So I would have liked to, I was hoping that maybe would get bumped up to, a 15 or maybe a 16. It may still, two doesn't matter for me now. I've already got the play in. So if it up, and I don't care, either way or there. But I think they can stick within that thing. Even maybe they're down 21 and they get a late touchdown or something to kind of cover that number there. So that's my thing. And I will expect Indiana to still win the game, but I think they're maybe due for one of the maybe not so great performances, but they're a good enough team to kind of pull it out and find a way to win. I think that might be what we're looking at here, because no matter how how good or how complete we think teams are these days, everybody's got that game where it's just ugly and you got to find a way to win. That even championship teams, that happens on a yearly basis.
Yeah, don't hate playing the odds there. You're right. They're due to play a close game at some point here and get scared, because everybody does eventually. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that game plays out for sure. I'm going to go in with one, and I guess I'm kind of testing things a little bit here because I'm playing just a touch of the recency bias because my team was upset by this squad last week. But I just feel like this matchup is what they want. Texas Tech is at home against Colorado. Of course, Colorado finds himself suddenly in the Big 12 title conversation because virtue of other teams losing, but they're going to Texas Tech, and Texas Tech's getting points. And it's not like Texas Tech has played bad football here lately. They've been on the trend upwards. They are getting 4 here, and obviously I think it's a game where the two teams match up. It's strength on strength. They both can get the pass game going pretty well. I think Tech's a little bit better though defensively, and also Tech brings in the element that they can run the ball a little bit. Taj Brooks got going really well last week against Iowa State, and I think he has ability to spring a couple of big plays in that one. I just like them being at home in this moment and getting some points. I just think it's going to be a close game. So, even if they were to happen to lose to Colorado, I think it stays within that 4. So that's where I'm going there.
I'm going to talked several times about the armed services teams and how the success they've had this season. Navy kind of let down a little bit, so we're going to hope the men on the front lines there, the Army, can do a little bit better here. Cover that 4.5 against North Texas. Could be a little tricky. Just North Texas has always been kind of one of those, if you want to call them mid majors or whatever, that kind of puts together a game here or there, and maybe Army hasn't probably played the likes that they've played, at least strength of schedule wise, but. I mean, 8-0 is 8-0, right? So, and then just the style that they play too is always kind of funky and a little bit different. It's not something that you're always going to see. Just that, basically, ground and pound, I guess. But the closest thing we have to 3 yards in a cloud of dust anymore is what the armed services teams do. So I think they're just the better team overall, though. And that's a pretty low number. If it was closer to like a touchdown or something, I might be a little bit more cautious with it. But I think that they can cover that 5 points pretty easily. So I'm going to take Army to do that against North Texas.
All right. Yeah, don't hate that one. That was a team I had on my list to take a look at it too as well. I'm going to go over to the Big Ten. This is one that I could see getting a little bit hairy as well, but I just like the upside way more for one team over the other. Penn State giving close to 2 touchdowns. It's under at 13.5 is where I have it against Washington. Penn State's obviously played well, not well enough to win their big games. They would have liked to obviously have pulled one out against Ohio State, but still, they're not playing bad football. I think they're a pretty well-rounded team. They've got an offense that can be good at times, and Washington has just been kind of all over the map. They a couple of games where they hang a little bit or surprise you, but for the most part, it's been disappointing. Once they get down, things go downhill fast for them. So I'm going to take the Penn State in that matchup.
I mean, coming off a championship, you would think, well, maybe, but it's a coaching change, whole new staff, new players, and this with transfers and all that thing. It's just hasn't really worked out well for Washington. Which maybe a couple years down the road might be a different story. But yeah, I don't think. I think they've kind of the games that they've looked competitive against is kind of like where they've peaked, I guess, is almost winning. It's not definitely not where you want to be. So I think that should be a pretty comfortable win there. I guess we'll switch to the positive side. If you said that, being negative Nancy there with the unders, well, we'll take overs on one of these games. And this one maybe just barely getting there with Oklahoma has not looked great this year. We kind of, talked about their bowl projection and prospects for that, and it's going to be cutting it close, by the looks of things. That main game helped there, kind of sneaking that in to get a W. And then there would be playing Missouri, who is also potentially down starting quarterback again, and then a couple of receivers are maybe banged up as well. So that could take a little bit of punch out of the offense, but if it's still a fairly low number, I mean, 24-21 easily covers, and that's not even high scoring as far as these teams go, or as far as your typical SEC game. I guess it's that's not a high score these days with the way the offenses are kind of taking over the defensive tone of, at least that's what we were told it was a defense. At least I think they just finally found out how to play offense is more my take on things. But either way, I think they can hit the overs. I did want to take Oklahoma because of the injuries I mentioned to Missouri seem a little bit more significant than what Oklahoma is going to be dealing with on their side, but they just haven't shown enough to be confident enough to pick them. At one point they were a 1-point underdog. I believe it switched to the 3-point favorite on their side. So I definitely maybe would have took the 1 point, but definitely not going to pick them to cover anything. I don't feel confident enough to say that they're going to win a game, by whether it be a field goal or anything, just the way they've looked in these, and even not even big games. Some of these games where it's a middle of the road conference opponent, they're getting beat by 20, 25 points.
Yeah, if you would have asked somebody before the season started, they thought, oh, it might be an interesting game this time of year. Yeah, it hasn't worked out that way.
Yeah, I mean, I recall, I'm fairly certain I had them on the overs list when we did the over unders on the season. I mean, they were like low 6.5, and it's going to be cutting it close. So
very true. Very true. I'm gonna go back to the negative side of the coin, because I'm gonna go back to an under here, and again, one that maybe surprises you, just because of one of the teams involved. Oregon, Maryland, but the number I feel like is pretty high. It's at 58, and I just feel like this is going to be one of those games where Oregon gets a big early lead and they don't need to do much more, so it's going to sit and stay at like a 42-0 type of game. That's what I kind of see maybe happening here. Maryland obviously has just really struggled. I don't think they are going to be the ones to put up much points towards this total. So I think Oregon gets up. They've shown earlier this season too that they don't necessarily all the time put pedal to the metal. Maybe against some teams that they want to beat real bad, they have. But against some of the mid-tier teams, and then, kind of playing down to the level competition, if you want to say that, they've just kind of cruised. So I think that's what happens here and stays under that big 58 number. So I'm going with the Ducks to not be as high-powered as they normally are.
Well, and then even with the unders, we're looking at now with these bigger numbers as we're getting. I mean, a lot of places are starting to get some actual like legitimate fall / early winter weather. So that's going to factor in. No matter, you can say we play at the wet balls and we practice outside, blah blah blah. It's when the game's on the line, it's a little bit different with those conditions. So I do think that could maybe in some certain parts of the country. I know they had some freaking hellacious snowstorm down there in like the Southwest, and there's been some heavy rains across the country. So not to play dime store meteorologist here, but that does factor into some of these games, especially as we're getting to the later part of the season. The last one I have is one of the teams that has been pretty good to us over the last couple of years, and we always like to kind of be easy with that, not hammer them too much. But I got to give BYU some love here. -4 this week. Well, what is that? It's the Holy War, right?
Holy War,
yeah. So hopefully they're a little less holy than Utah did this week, so that a little more violence on that sideline. We've discussed Utah's struggles, and a lot of it's not of their own. I mean, you get an injury or starting quarterback, any team across the country, it's probably going to affect you pretty greatly. I mean, there's a few here or there that probably someone could step right in and, did not miss a beat, but there's not many teams that are going to overcome, especially a quarterback with that type of track record and that level of success. So, I mean, it doesn't excuse it. I'm sure they want to win more, but it's just that sometimes that's the breaks you get, and that's kind of what it is. On the other side, BYU is actually kind of hammering some folks this year. They've were kind of cardiac kids there. Last season or even the season before, winning some really close games, but this year they've taken a little bit of guesswork out of it. So that did make me a little nervous because they haven't had very many close games yet. But I just don't think Utah has the firepower to stick with them. Not this season. Maybe down the road, but I think it'd be a fairly easy win there.
Yeah, I don't hate that pick. Obviously, for my squad's sake, it'd be okay if Utah went ahead and win the game. But if there's one game where they're going to rise up and play better, it would be this one. But like you said, the firepower not there. It just isn't there for Utah this year. So yeah, BYU they'll be ready too. So I do like that one also. I was going to throw one other one out there too that I was real close to having in my top 5. UNLV, a team that we've loved throughout the year, they're laying less than 2 touchdowns at Hawaii. Of course, we got bit by that earlier in the season with Boise, so it wasn't like I was like, I don't know. But it only being at 13.5, that's one that I would take a hard look at this weekend, especially if that number came down a little bit. I'd be interested in that. And the other one that I thought was intriguing, but the problem is Florida had a real key injury there in the second half of that game last week with DJ Lagway going down. I don't know what his status is. If he's in the game, then they're getting over 3 touchdowns against Texas. And we all know that we haven't been overly impressed with Texas this year. So that would be another one I take a peek at, depending on how the injury report comes out and where that line stays.
This one may be also kind of in that recency bias thing, but that one of these freaky Friday night games, Iowa at UCLA, 8:00 kick there. I guess Central will locally be 6, but the travel, whatever. And Iowa, I know they've looked good here and there, but they also were the same team that lost outright to Michigan State squad. So kind of the same deal there. It'd have to be an ugly deal. It's about the same spread, 6.5. I believe that's what they're favored against Michigan State on the road as well, was it not? So setting up similar. We'll see. I mean, I'm obviously not playing it, so not that confident in it, but that's probably like the biggest one to watch besides what we made picks there. There's so many big numbers. I want to take a swing at them, but Purdue's just miserable. They're 38-point underdog. How do you even feel even with 38 points? Like, how do you feel confident? Is that even? And then what was Mississippi State in Tennessee? I believe was another one. And that's 4.5. I'm like, God, I could see him covering, but I'm like, those big numbers hadn't seemed to work out. So we're just gonna stay away from. But those are a few if you just want to do like some wacky parlay with some big numbers. There's some pretty big in conference numbers, and even out of conference. Notre Dame's 26.5, I think, or so over Florida State. So that might be the one you could probably be most confident with the dog, because it's not even a matter of like talent or like want to. It's just Florida State's just they're checked out. It's time. They're ready for a new coach, and it's not going to happen this year. I don't see how they win another game.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that will be one that probably does get ugly. So yeah, that's what we're looking at here this week with our picks. As a side note, too, as well, I know a lot of people don't want to talk about a lot of things when it comes to voting and elections, but you did get a good result there in your home state, SJ, when it comes to what we talk about here on the program.
Yeah, about damn time. We'll probably get into more detail, I figured, here on the weekly pod, the audio version. But yeah, just good to be moving in the right direction. I don't like the fact that, and this is, we can get more detail of it having a year to get things set up seems a little bit long, but I think they'll get things going before that. I'll kind of explain why I think that's the case, just on some things I've noticed at the local like betting establishments, whatever you want to call them. I guess you still call them casinos, but not really saying casinos these days, more like a sports bar with a few slot machines, but however you want to look at it. But either way, yeah, it's good to be moved finally. I mean, I think all 7 states that border Missouri have already had it for some time now. So I guess figured there was now or never, I suppose.
Yeah, so those fireworks loving folks finally voted for some legalized sports gambling. And it's a good time. All right, keep following us, of course, on the socials as well. If you see something you like, give us a shout. You see the handles there for the Twitter accounts, so just hit us up and let us know. And then, of course, we'd appreciate if you would like and subscribe, and of course, get the notifications here for these weekly picks coming at you every week here on the YouTube channel. And then also, of course, likes and share the podcast. All the major platforms, including right here on YouTube. You can listen to it, and then you can also find it through our host over there at Spotify, the main 2 locations. But any of the major services, you can track it down. Just search the name and you'll find it. That's SG Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. We hope you have a great week watching some more college football and making some plays. That's our every day we're covering picks here for week 11. We'll see you next time for some more covers.